So you would have seen the news by now that UFC 303 seems to be saved. And I say seems to be because we need to wait and see what happens between now and then. But this is looking better than it was. I won't say it's looking great, but it's looking better than it was. Which is, we now have Jamal Hill versus Carlos Ulberg, and we have Ian Garry versus Michael Venom Page on the pay-per-view cards. So, interesting fights. I'll do a more in-depth breakdown of Jamal Hill versus Carlos Ulberg. I live in New Zealand, and I'm from New Zealand, so there are going to be a lot of very excited folk around here for that fight. And I will say right now that Carlos Ulberg, he has the opportunity to become the next breakout fighter under City Kickboxing, because that gym is really not doing well at the moment, because Volkanovski just got knocked out again, lost his title. Adesanya, we don't know what's going on with him, and I'll do another video on what is going on with Dricus du Plessis versus Adesanya, because it's very strange. And Shane Young, well, he's cut from the UFC. Kai Kara France, the more time goes on, the more people forget about how he probably should have won against Amir Albazi, and he's not doing anything. And then you've got Dan Hooker, who may have had actually the best victory of his career, but against Jarlin Turner, but now he can't make it to the fight, and Jarlin Turner just got finished by Renato Moicano. So, yeah, Ulberg, he won't just be able to become a breakout fighter in a division which really needs some new blood in the light heavyweight division, but he could bring a lot of attention and potentially goodwill to City Kickboxing if he wins. So, a lot on the line for him. In terms of Ian Garry versus Michael Venom Page, I will do a video talking about the disgrace that is Colby Covington. But in terms of this fight, it's quite interesting because you've got two guys from the Britain area, and Michael Venom Page, he is a guy who, how can I say this? He's unorthodox on the feet. He doesn't look like he is going to be anything special in the future, meaning I don't think many people, or if anybody, really looks at this guy as a future world champion. And so therefore, he's a guy with a lot of hype, but he's known for his flashiness more than his high-level fighting, and that is something which, it's good for casuals, but it's not really good for hardcores necessarily. On the other hand, you've got Ian Garry, who has mastered becoming the guy you like to hate. He claims he likes to be hated, but then when the fans start booing him, he starts quivering a little bit and trying to play Mr. Nice Guy all of a sudden. So, yeah, he wants to be hated, but he doesn't want to be hated by anyone, if that makes sense. His fighting style, he's looked pretty good so far, but the last I remember, or his last two fights, I should say, he couldn't finish a one-legged Neil Magny, who took the fight on short notice, and really, he should have done so much more in that fight. Against Jeff Neal, it was just an awful fight to begin with. Two guys just staring at each other, and I can understand why you may have had Ian Garry winning. I felt that was fair, but Jeff Neal, he did just as much in that fight as Ian Garry, and it was the commentary that bothered me in that fight. So, my point is, you've got two guys, one really young, one who's getting up there in age, but very athletically gifted, who have a lot of hype behind them, but not necessarily in terms of becoming future world champions, because I don't think anybody looks at Ian Garry like this guy is going to beat Leon Edwards or Shavkat Rakhmonov. I mean, yeah, I don't think anybody look at both of these guys as future world champions, but they've got a lot of hype behind them. So that is good for a pay-per-view card in the end. And therefore, it's an interesting fight. I can see both guys winning, and as much as I don't want to start giving Ian Garry more credit than I feel he deserves, I can see him winning this fight. Again, I have not been impressed by him lately, but with that being said, Michael Venom Page makes a lot of technical mistakes on the feet, and Ian Garry, he is pretty conservative, so on the feet, doesn't give you so many openings, and I would not put it past Ian Garry fiddling his way to a decision. But by saying that, is Ian Garry's body, which I'll just say is suspect given certain life choices. Is he going to be able to take the hardest knees, the hardest elbows, the hardest punches, really, that he's ever taken? Very interesting. And yeah, I'm going to be watching the fight with some interest, not going to lie. As much as I don't like Ian Garry, this is somewhat interesting for interesting reasons. I'll say that. It's an interesting situation, so therefore, really, people, I guess, will pay for it. But yeah, I'll do a video on Colby Covington later, just what a disgrace this guy has turned out to be. And let me know what you guys think down below about this fight, and also Allberg versus Jamal Hill. Let me know, guys. Like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Later.